Hello, year 8. So just going to go through your home improvements task step by step, just to give you an idea of what you need to do for each stage. So we're going to start with part 1, the painting. So the first thing you need to do is calculate the total square area of all your walls and ceilings in your living room. So the way you should set this out is calculate each wall and the ceiling separately. So you might want to write it something like wall 1 area and write out the formula, which is length times width. So we are looking at the living room, and we know that the top is 6 meters and the side here is 5.5 meters. And this side here is 6 meters as well. So we're going to call this wall 1. So the area of that wall is 6 meters long, and we know that it's 3.2 meters high because the ceilings are 3.2 meters high. So what we're going to put in is a length of 6 meters by 3.2 meters, and then you'll do the calculations for the first wall. Then you'll do the calculations for the second wall here, which will be 5.5 by 3.2. The third wall, which will be 6 meters by 3.2 meters high. And then finally, you're going to do the ceiling. Now the ceiling is going to have the same area as the floor. So for that, you can use the dimensions of the room itself, which is 6 meters by 5.5 meters. Alrighty, so you can use a similar process for the master bedroom, which is what you need to do next, which is 5.25 meters by 7 meters. Again, but in this case, we're going to have this wall here, this wall here, this wall here, and this wall here. So a total of 4 walls, whereas in the living room, this is not a wall for the purposes of this assignment. You've then got to do the dining room, which you'll do in a similar fashion, so calculating the area of each wall and the ceiling, then adding them together. And then for the final question, calculate the total square area of all 3 rooms. You just need to add up your totals from the first 3 parts. Alrighty, moving on to part E. So for this question, it's asking you how many liters of paint you'll need to give 1 coat of paint to each wall and each ceiling. So we've worked out the total area, and we know from what this tells us here that an average liter of paint will cover 16 square meters. So what we need to do to calculate this is divide the total square area from part D by 16, and that will give us how many liters of paint you will need to paint each wall and each ceiling. Part F, alrighty, so camera just cut out. So part F, we're going to look at how many liters of paint would you need to give each wall 2 coats of paint. So this question is just looking for the amount of paint required to give each wall 2 coats of paint. So you'll need to go back through your answers to part 1 and calculate the total area just of the wall component. So add up wall 1, wall 2, wall 3 of the living room, all 4 walls of the master bedroom, and the 3 walls of the dining room, and that will give you your total area that you'll need to paint. Obviously you're going to do 2 coats of paint, so once you find out how much it will take to do 1 coat, you need to double that to get 2 coats. Question or parts G and H, there is actually a little bit of ambiguity here because it's not clear whether it's talking about 1 coat of everything or 1 coat of the walls and the ceilings. As a result, we're going to I'll be accepting both answers. So if you decide to tell me how much it's going to cost to paint 1 coat of everything, I'll accept that. If you're going to tell me how much it's going to cost to paint 2 coats of everything, then that is fine. So the way you'll need to do this is you've worked out up in part E how many liters you'll need to give one coat of paint to the walls and the ceilings. We now know that we can buy tins of paint for $18.95, which is pretty cheap, and they come in 4-litre cans. So we need to know how many paint cans we would need to buy to sufficiently give us enough paint to paint everything, basically. So for argument's sake, if we worked out we needed 16 litres of paint, that means we'd need 4 lots of 4-litre paint cans. So the total cost would be 4 times $18.95. Similarly, for part H, you can just multiply your answer from part G by 2, because we're now doing 2 coats. Alrighty, moving on to flooring. So in this shoddy little rundown place that you've bought, you found that the flooring in all 3 rooms needs to be replaced as well. You're going to have new carpet in the bedroom and the living room, and a floating timber floor in the dining room. So that means the bedroom is going to have carpet, and also your living room, that's going to have carpet, and we're going to have timber floors here, floating timber floor in the dining room. So what we need to work out here, the first thing we need to work out is how many square meters of carpet are needed to cover the living room. So to calculate this, you simply need to use your area formula again, which is length times width, and this time we're just using it on the floor dimensions, which is going to be 6 times 5.5 meters, and you'll need to tell me what that is. For the master bedroom, you're going to do a similar calculation. So for part B, you're going to do a similar calculation, and then for part C, you're going to add together what you've calculated in parts A and part B. Alrighty, so for part E, part D, you're looking at the total cost of carpeting these 2 rooms. So what you need to do here is work out the total square area. So take your part from this. So you might have, for argument's sake, it might be 10 square meters, and then you need to multiply that by the cost of the carpet, which is $37.90. So you need to get the total square area of the rooms you're carpeting and multiply it by the cost of the carpet, which is $37.90. Alright, similarly for questions E, F and G, you need to work out the square meterage of the dining room, which is going to be 4.5 meters by 5.5, so you need to multiply them together to work out the total square area. You'll need to work out the total cost for floating timber floors, which is going to be $44.85 multiplied by the square area of the dining room, and that will give you your total cost. You then need to basically add up your total cost. So you've got the total cost of carpeting the rooms up here, you've got the total cost of the dining room floor. For the total cost of replacing your floors, you need to add what you've worked out in part D and what you worked out in part F. Alrighty, so now we've finished the indoor parts. We're now going to move to the outdoor parts. So basically you bought a house with a rectangular courtyard, and you're going to have a garden built in each corner, and these are the gardens here, and I'm going to shade them in just so you can see them. So these are going to be our gardens here, 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 and here. It might not be clear to you, but what these are is each of these is a quarter of a circle, alrighty? And that circle has got a radius of 1.7 meters, okay? So if we add those 4 corners together, we essentially get a full circle. So what we need to do for part C, part 1, is calculate the total area of the 4 corner gardens, which is these guys here. The way you're going to do that is using the formula area equals pi r squared. So what that means is pi, which is, you can get that on your calculator, there's a button that's pi, or you can use an approximation of 3.14 or 3.141. Then you need to multiply it by the radius of our circle, which is 1.7 meters, and then multiply it by 1.7 meters again. So the area is going to be pi times 1.7 times 1.7, and that is, if you do those calculations and set them out something like that, and then you'll come up with an answer there. You then need to calculate the area of the courtyard to be paved, and what isn't necessarily 100% clear to you is that the area that needs to be paved is basically every area in this courtyard that isn't a garden. So the way we need to work, the first thing we need to do for this question is you'll need to work out the total length of our garden, and then you'll also need to work out the total width of our garden. Keep in mind 8.6 meters is only from this side of the garden to this side of the garden. You'll need to add 1.7 meters here and 1.7 meters here to get this total length, and then you'll need to add 1.7 meters here and 1.7 meters here to 2.3 to give us the total width here. Alrighty. To calculate the area of the courtyard to be paved, however, you need to work out the whole area of the garden and then subtract the 4 corner gardens, which will be the answer from part 1. So you need to calculate the total area and then subtract the 4 corner gardens. Alrighty, so how many pavers will be needed to cover the area? This is a nice fun question. So what you're going to need to do is first, the way I'd probably recommend doing it is we know that each paver is 200 millimeters by 400 millimeters, so I'd recommend converting these to meters. If you're unsure on how to do that, in the Hazy textbook there is a conversion guide, or there may be a conversion guide online somewhere, or calculator that you can use. So you then need to work out the area of each paver. So I'd convert these to meters first, and then if you multiply them by each other, that will give you the area of each paver. You then need to divide the total area that needs to be paved, which you calculate in part 2, by the area of each paver. That will tell you how many pavers you need. Once you've calculated how many pavers you'll need for this section here, you need to multiply the number of pavers you'll need by the cost of each paver, which is 75 cents each. So take your answer from part 3, multiply it by the cost per paver, and that will give you your total to pave the courtyard. Alrighty, we're almost done. We're up to the garden, which is the last step in the calculations. So to jazz your little property up, you're going to put a planter box in your front yard that needs to be filled with soil or potting mix. It's 4.5 meters long, 40 centimeters wide, and you need to fill it with 25 centimeters of potting mix. And what this means is, if you imagine the planter box, is like a long box that's 4.5 meters long, 40 centimeters wide. We don't know exactly how high it is, but we know that we want to fill it to a depth of 25 centimeters of potting mix. So what we've effectively created is a 3D shape that's going to look something like this. Alrighty, so it's going to be 4.5 meters long, it's going to be 40 centimeters wide, and it's going to be 25 centimeters deep with potting soil. Alrighty, so what you'll need to do to this is you'll need to work out the volume of this. To do that, I'd probably start by converting 4.5 meters into centimeters, and again there's a conversion chart you can use in your textbook. So convert 4.5 meters to centimeters and then multiply these, which was 4.5 meters, whatever that is in centimeters, by 40 centimeters by 25 centimeters, and that will give you the volume in centimeters cubed. Alrighty, you'll need to then convert centimeters cubed to liters. Alrighty, so part one is calculating the total volume of soil, and you can do that in centimeters cubed, which is what I'd recommend. For part two, you need to convert this to liters. For part three, you need to work out how much it's going to cost to fill the planter box with soil. So you know, for each 20 litres that you've got, it's going to take one bag of potting mix at $4.89. So you need to work out basically the total volume of the planter box divided by the total volume of the planter box in litres, divide it by 20 litres, and that will tell you the amount of bags of potting mix you'll need to use. You need to think about whether you can buy half bags or quarter bags of potting mix, but you'll need to get the total number of potting mix bags required and multiply it by $4.89, and that will give you the total cost to fill the planter box with soil. Alrighty, you're then going to move on to just summing up the total costs. So you've got 2 coats of paint, you're going to put that in here. Again, just use your discretion or the answer that you got from earlier here. As long as you're consistent, that doesn't matter which, if you're talking about 2 coats of paint on everything or just the walls, but as long as you are clear and consistent throughout your whole assignment. So if you borrow an answer from a mate, he might have done it in a separate way, so just keep that in mind. You then need to add the cost of the flooring, so that's carpeting and the timber flooring, the cost of the paving, which calculated at the first part of the garden or landscaping section, and finally the cost of the planter box. What you need to finally do is work out whether the $10,000 you put away will be enough to cover all your renovations. So the way you'll work that out is add all of your costs together and see if they come up to an amount that's more than $10,000 or less than $10,000. If it's greater than $10,000, you need to work out how much debt you'll have. So that'll be the total amount, subtract $10,000. That'll tell you how much in debt you'd have to go. If it's less than $10,000, just subtract the total cost from $10,000, and that will tell you how much you've got left over. Okay, so that is all of the calculations you need to do. The final thing you need to do a maths write-up guide. So the first page is going to be a title page, and I recommend you do this on Word or a similar software like that. It needs to have your full name and the class you're in. So if you're in 802, so you'd put your full name, so you might put Timothy Trainer, but you use your full name obviously. And sorry about that, that is my cat. Be quiet, Sonny. So what you need to do for the final part that's not focusing, you need to write your full name, your teacher's names, i.e. Mr. Trainer, you need to use the assignment title. So use the one from the front page is what I'd recommend. Home improvements. You then need to write an introduction, which is about 50 words, just to introduce the problem, and an educated guess as to whether you think you're going to have enough money or why you think you might not have enough money. It can be you get to use a little bit of creative thinking here, so it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong in your guess, but as long as you back up your guess or your estimation as to why. If you've already done all the calculations, you're obviously going to know, but you can kind of pretend that you don't know, but make a kind of educated guess, as it were. For the method, so basically these are for the calculations that you need to do. You do need to do the formula, or the blank formula like I have, so area equals length times width, so make sure you include that, or a mathematical description of what you're going to do. So you might say, I'm going to divide the cost of this, or multiply the cost of this by the number of pavers, etc. You need to show full working out. If you just come out with the answers, you will not get full marks, and we can't give you full marks. You need to have final answers, preferably with a little sentence, so you can do all of this section in a Word document. So you can hand up your working out that you might have done on the sheets, but if you can hand up this section all as a Word document typed, that would be the best way to go. In the future, you're going to need to type everything, so it's probably a good time to start. If you don't have access to a computer, that's fine. You will need to write this stuff by hand. And finally, just end with a discussion. Explain whether your guess from your introduction was close, and if it was close, why do you think it was close? If it wasn't close, why do you think it went wrong? You then need to look at what worked well, what didn't work so well, so what you might have had trouble with, or what you're not sure on, or things like that. And then finally, what did you learn about, it says here buying a pizza, but think about buying a house. So what did you learn about buying a house? Is it cheaper than you thought, more expensive than you thought, etc. Alrighty, and a reminder, this is due this Thursday, 2018, not 2019. If you got any questions, see your teacher. Thank you. Bye.